Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, thank you everyone for joining us. Rebel 11 was created about 5 years ago by Joni Parsons and Monica Smith to provide informative, meaningful, fun, edgy events and retreats for women and for men of all ages, some men. And right now we have about 7,000 women in our community. Because of the pandemic, obviously we moved from in-person events to online, and this has allowed us to expand internationally. So we're so grateful for everyone joining us today. So I am thrilled to be talking with podcaster, life and business coach, and all-around shameless mom and friend, Sara Dean. I first met Sara about 6 or 7 years ago. Sara was the owner of a boot camp gym in my neighborhood. I joined the gym and I loved the community of women that Sara built there and the community that she had built up. So eventually Sara sold the gym, but not before creating the Shameless Mom Academy and the podcast. So Sara, welcome to Rebel 11. Thank you for being here. First of all, can you tell us more about your journey from being a trainer and a gym owner to now a podcaster and a life coach?
Yes. So thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And I'm seriously, truly honored with this national or international following here. Really, really exciting. So my favorite thing to do is to be able to speak to women and a few good men. I always say women and a few good men. And even back in the days when I had my gym, it was mostly women and a few good men. And so I love being able to speak to women and be able to inspire and motivate and really inspire women to take action and step up and lead in different ways and in powerful ways. And so I did that in my gym. As a gym owner, my favorite thing to do was watch women grow through transformation and grow through transforming their bodies. But at a certain point, I recognized that I was in this industry that was so exclusively focused on helping women shrink their bodies that I knew that I needed to step out of the industry and do something bigger with my time and my energy and kind of the investment in my energy in order to really support women taking up more space instead of constantly helping women shrink their bodies. What I found in the course of owning my fitness business, which I had for about 15 years, was that so many of my clients would come in and no matter how big and powerful they were in the various roles in their lives, they always had this goal to be smaller in their bodies. And over time, and after I became a mom, I started to think, what if we could take that energy that we so hugely focus on making ourselves smaller and really put that into focusing on making ourselves bigger and play bigger in the world and play bigger in our various roles and in relationships and in leadership? What would that look like if we could spend all of our energy focusing on that instead of worrying about like, how do I lose belly fat and how do I make my butt look a certain way and the things that women just get so consumed by? So I started the podcast to help moms in particular take up space and stop shrinking and start shining. And after about 1.5 years of having the podcast and the gym simultaneously, it was pretty clear to me that I wanted to build a platform that was really exclusively about helping women and moms take up space. And so I sold the gym and went all in on the show, on the podcast, and built a bigger community around that, where I had the opportunity just to have greater impact and have larger scale impact and help women transform in different ways instead of just transforming their bodies in really specific ways and trying to shrink their bodies. So here we are now 6 years later, and the show has a huge following, and I've been able to help women in all endeavors in their lives in terms of helping them take up space in various ways. And it's been really, really fun, really exciting.
So, and I know you're called the Shameless Mom, but it's not your messages and the message of the women that you talk with is not just for moms.
Correct. Yes. So my show is for moms, although we have a decent number of listeners who are not moms and a few good men who listen to the show as well. But my messaging is always about helping people take up space, helping people step into their power, helping people recognize some of the subtle ways that our power is stripped away from us, how we lose self-trust over the course of our lifetime, especially women. And so my message definitely has extended beyond mothers at this point. And so, which allows me to be here today and speak to a wide range of people listening. So I'm very grateful for that.
So one of the things we're talking about today is playing bigger. And one of the things that you have spoken about before is women consciously and unconsciously seeking permission before they take action. So I think we can all recognize what it means to seek permission consciously, but how do women and maybe people in general seek permission unconsciously. So what is the difference?
Yes. So when we are conditioned, and women specifically are conditioned to seek permission and to assume that we're not qualified. So consciously we ask for permission, like verbally asking for permission. Would it be okay if I do this? And do you mind if I do that? And is this okay? And is that okay? And would I be stepping on someone's toes? So we ask permission in a lot of different ways, just verbally. Non-verbally, we let other people go first. And so we might see something that we want, but we think, oh, I'm going to go ahead and let someone else who I deem to be more qualified or more worthy or more enough of something, I'm going to let them go first. So that can be a silent way where we seek permission by actively not stepping into something. We also consciously make the decision to not do something right now. So we think, well, not right now. I'm going to wait until I'm more ready or more qualified in a certain way. So we let things pass us by that way, or we wait for invitations. So we assume that we aren't allowed to do something unless someone invites us to do it. I'm not allowed to go for the promotion unless my boss recommends me for it. I'm not allowed to take time for myself in my busy household unless my partner tells me that it's okay, versus just saying, these are my needs and this is what I want and here's how it's going to happen. So some of that is conscious, some of that's unconscious. The unconscious piece, though, really, the really significant unconscious piece is that we unconsciously don't recognize our worth, our value, and our own qualifications and our own superpowers in order to feel poised and positioned to go after the things that we want. So there's the conscientiousness of asking for permission or not asking for permission, but then there's this unconscious messaging in our head on a loop, typically, where we are just not owning our worth and owning our strengths, owning our superpowers. So it doesn't even occur to us to go for something because we're stuck in this negative cycle of self-talk that is unconsciously holding us back, that we might not even recognize the patterns that have been existing there for quite some time.
So why is that? Why do we do that to ourselves?
So we do this because we have a lifelong erosion of self-trust. And for anyone in a marginalized group, and for women, we are always told in various ways, subtly and not so subtly, that we're not enough and that we should be more of something, or in order to be ready for something or qualified for something, we need to check a certain amount of boxes. And typically those boxes are boxes that are most easily accessible to white men. And so we are constantly underwriting our own intuition and our own self-trust because we don't quite fit in that box, and we can't quite check all those check marks off. And so we're often working to fit into these boxes, check these boxes that were never made for us. And so we always feel like we're just not quite right. We're just not quite there yet. And that consistently erodes our self-trust, and it also really undermines our intuition. So instead of us being able to recognize that I'm really good at this thing and I'm going to go for it, or this is where I think I can really add value to the world or to a relationship or to a situation, we stop ourselves because we check our gut and we say, oh, but I don't have what this other person has, or I don't have what society says is needed 100% for this role or this position or this opportunity. And then we opt out.
Right. And so, I mean, there is talk about women's intuition, and there are things that we are so intuitive about.
Yeah.
So to not trust our own intuition kind of negates what we have.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. What about negative self-talk? Where does that come into play, and how do we stop those patterns?
So negative self-talk really comes from the loops that we get stuck on. And the loops can be from conscious messaging and unconscious messaging. So it can be like just from flipping through magazines over the course of our lifetime, or scrolling on the internet, or scrolling social media at this point, because most of us probably don't flip through magazines that often anymore, but there's lots of messaging that we're always taking in. And then there's messaging that we take from our childhood. We take messaging from our parents' messaging and trauma and life experiences, and we internalize that, and we get stuck in these negative these negative self-talk loops that keep us really, really small. So I can walk you through what that negative self-talk loop looks like because what we ultimately have is a broken cycle of self-trust when we get stuck in that loop. So that negative loop is going to look like we have an action step that we've taken or a situation that we're in. So there's a triggering event, whether it's something that we see or something we participate in. There's a triggering event where something doesn't quite work out right, or it doesn't quite fit in our head the way we want it to. So it could be a triggering event, might be like we show up and we're working on something at work and we fail in our own eyes. We miss the mark. It doesn't quite go how we want, and we feel defeat. So that can happen in the context of work, but it can also happen just scrolling social media. So I'm scrolling social media and I see like, oh gosh, like everyone else went away for spring break and they did went on these amazing trips and had so much fun with their family. And we didn't do anything because I had to stay home and work. And now I feel like a failure as a parent. So we feel like we missed the mark and we feel defeat. So there's this broken cycle of self-trust where we have some sort of triggering event. We feel some sort of sense of defeat. And then in the broken cycle of self-trust, what we do in that moment of feeling defeat or feeling disappointment or feeling frustration is we assume blame and we own it as there's something wrong with me. I'm not enough. I'm not a good enough mom that I didn't, or a good enough partner that I didn't think in advance to plan the right spring break, or that I didn't have the resources to plan the right spring break, or I'm not a good enough employee or team member or partner to have gotten us through this project and have it work out to, 100% at the end, or get that like A+, or have it be completely successful. And so we assume that blame. And when we assume blame for things, then we stay small. We stay small and we collect that evidence. And so I talk a lot about collecting evidence. We collect evidence around the fact that, oh, see, I missed the mark again. I was right. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough for this. I'm not ready. I'm not enough this. I'm not enough that. And when we let ourselves collect that evidence over the course of our lifetimes, we have entire catalogs in our heads of all the ways that we think that we're not enough, because that's the evidence that we've been collecting. And we can find that evidence anywhere. Women in particular, and anyone from a marginalized group, can find evidence of not enoughness at every turn. And when you internalize that, whether it's conscious or not, you consistently stay small, because the messages in your head are keeping you in that place of like not showing up, not trying, not putting yourself out there, and instead staying small, shrinking, waiting for invitations that never come, because no one knows that you even want to be perceived as ready.
So how do we avoid this? How do we get rid of that evidence or that catalog in our head? Sheila has put in the chat, it sounds like lack of confidence and self-esteem.
Yes.
So how do we get past that?
Absolutely. So I want to back up before we go to how we get past it, because I want to talk about some steps that happen over the course of our lifetime that lead us into this. And it's actually, Sheila, you're absolutely right. It's a lack of confidence, lack of self-esteem. Where does the lack of confidence and self-esteem come from, and lack of self-esteem come from? And where does the erosion of self-trust begin? It begins very, very young. And it then cycles throughout multiple seasons or phases of our life. So it begins with gender roles as very little kids. It can also begin. So if I'm talking to only women, it begins with gender roles. If I'm talking to other marginalized groups, it starts with any way that you can be othered at a very, very young age. So using the example of gender roles, from a very young age, women are taught to override preferences, likes, and dislikes. Men are as well taught to override preferences, likes, and dislikes. So what that looks like is, if I'm a little girl and I want to wear the blue shorts instead of the pink dress, my mom might say, oh, but grandma bought you the dress and it's so pretty. And don't you want to be pretty? And don't you want to please grandma? So that's where it can start really young. Like my mom is asking me to override my instinct around what I want to wear. It might be with a toy. A little boy wants to play with a doll instead of playing with trucks. And someone in the family is like, no. Like, we're not having you take a doll out in public. If you want to take the truck, you can take the truck. So then the little boy is then overriding his instinct or his intuition or his preferences from a really young age. So it starts there. For women, it really quickly, in a matter of a few years, shifts into conditioning around diet culture. So we are taught from a really young age that certain foods are bad, that certain body types are bad, and that you should always be shrinking your body. And that's told to us in many conscious and unconscious ways of messaging, but it's also what we see in multiple generations of family members. We recognize that, like, oh yeah, my mom was always on a diet. She was always trying to shrink her body. And oh yeah, my grandma also, she had these disordered eating tendencies or things about body image and food. And so from a very young age, diet culture is very much ingrained in how we are socialized. Then when we look into teen years and early young adult years, we look at how are women socialized in relationships, and how does this play into things like rape culture? We're taught that we should be attractive enough to entice a partner, but not too attractive because we might attract a predator. So all of these ways of showing up in the world and all of the messaging that we're receiving through just into early adulthood make us override our instincts, because we're always checking what's the thing that I need to be doing to fit in, to be safe, to show up, to be what I'm supposed to be, to fit a certain mold. And we're overriding instincts. When we go into then the our career paths, we are told that the people in charge always know better, or that someone who's older than you knows more than you, or someone who has more education or experience knows better than you. So we override our instincts quickly when we're young adults in the workplace, because we think, oh, well, Bob in accounting, he's been here for 20 years. He must know way more than me. And so we might stifle our instincts around being innovative in the workplace because we are overriding, because of our cultural conditioning and social conditioning. We're overriding those instincts to show up and speak up and use our voice in different ways. And then if we are also women who become mothers, when we look at motherhood, we can look at how we naturally have to override instincts in motherhood in order to keep a baby alive. So if anyone has had a child here, and men, this can happen with men too, but if you are a mother being a primary caregiver to a baby, you override your instincts to feed yourself, to sleep, to pee, to get any sort of rest, to take a shower for months on end, because you're focused on keeping a baby alive, which is an important thing to do. But by the time you get a few months, even a couple of years into motherhood, you are now decades or a lifetime into overriding instincts and eroding your self-trust. And so now what does that look like when you decide you want to go do something in the world? You step into that broken cycle of self-trust where you have that place of, like, something goes awry, you feel that defeat, you assume blame, and you stay small, like we talked about earlier. So what do you do about it, was your question, Natalia. And so what do we do about this is we heal the cycle of self-trust. And so in order to heal the cycle of self-trust, you really have to work on doing a couple different things. The first thing is to own your superpowers and to learn about who you are, what your gifts are, and how you contribute to the world in ways that are meaningful to you and in ways that touch the world that feel good to you. And so we have to stop and push pause for a minute and look at, who am I? How do I want to show up in the world? What's the impact that I want to have? And what are the gifts that I have that make me uniquely me? And this can look like a lot of different things, and it can look at like different things at different seasons in our lives. And so for a long time, me teaching boot camp classes was me owning my superpower. For me to stand in front of 40 women and yell at them in like a mostly loving way, but yell at them and inspire them to be as strong as possible and go as fast as possible and go hard all the time. Like, that was me showing up in my superpowers. That was not anything that had ever been modeled. I broke a lot of molds to step into that role, especially as someone who did not grow up with, I grew up in a family where no one was athletic. No one played sports. I was an overweight kid. I was not an athlete growing up. I had to find something that felt good, find something that allowed me to use my voice in a way that felt meaningful to me, find something that allowed me to have impact. And for me, that thing was standing in a room full of women and yelling and inspiring them to push their bodies and to be strong and to feel their power. But that took me overriding cultural and social conditioning, family conditioning for a number of years before I got there. And once I got there, I had to decide, this is who I want to be in this moment. And this is what feels good to me. And I had to heal that cycle of self-trust. And what that looked like was deciding, when I take action steps and when something goes awry, when I feel that defeat or frustration or a moment of failure, I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to assume blame. And instead, I'm going to look at, who do I want to be? Who am I becoming? How do I want to have impact? Who do I want to influence? How do I want to help others? What is a solution what is a problem that I can solve for my clients, for people in my community that other people don't want to solve, that other people don't have the same skill set or the same motivation or drive to solve? And in that moment, I can then remember and recognize that I have a voice that I want to use in a certain way that inspires people to take action in a certain way. And that is my superpower. And so for a long time, it was in that boot camp capacity and being a personal trainer. And then that shifted into when I started my podcast. And now it was recognizing like, okay, how am I going to own my power in this instance? How am I going to show up and start a podcast? No one else in my family is doing a podcast. Most of the people didn't know what it was when I started. Many of them thought it was the same as a YouTube channel. And I had to recognize that there's going to be a whole bunch of people that don't understand what I'm doing. They're not going to get it, but I am going to show up here and use my voice in this way because this is the impact that I want to have in the world. And there's going to be people who roll their eyes. There's going to be people that are like, oh, she's too big for her britches. There's going to be people who don't understand. And that's okay, because I know that I want to have impact in a certain way. And I know that that's my strength and that that's where my power lies. And other people don't have to understand it for me to have impact, because the opportunity for impact is going to be between you and me, the people who are on watching me, listening and learning today on a screen, and not so much about like the other people in my community who don't understand or want to pass judgment on it. So it's, in terms of what do you do, it's really looking at owning your superpowers. And I can walk you through how to do that in a bit if you want. And then we look at healing that cycle of self-trust, so that when we have those failures, those defeats, we, instead of getting small, staying small, deciding that we're done, we're going to walk away, we instead recognize, oh, that didn't go as planned. What can I learn from it? And then how can I immediately take another action step to experience a win or to experience some success in some sort of small way?
Yeah, I think it would be great to go through some steps. And if anyone has questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We do have a couple of people teaching our kids how to own their feelings in a positive way and a love for their own bodies. And then find small wins, which I think is super important for even really small wins add up. But also the steps to find our own voice and how we can use that, or finding our voice or our superpower in a new way to build confidence, if we can touch on that.
Absolutely. So I want to touch on finding small wins first, because yes, Fatim, I hope I'm saying your name correctly, you're absolutely right. It is about finding those small wins, and it's about having them really frequently and repeatedly. And so what happens when we have a small win is that we're then motivated to take another step. So if we can have a small win, we can take another step, and no matter how small the step is, we stay in motion and we stay in momentum and we stay moving forward. And if you think about physics and the idea of inertia, when I'm moving forward, even if it's a tiny bit, there's energy going in this direction. As soon as I decide to accept defeat and stop and sit back and stay small, now I'm back here, and the energy it takes to get myself moving forward again is enormous. And so as soon as we decide to stop, now we have to think, and I can use this example around exercise, because this is a commonly known example. If I decide to stop working out and I decide I'm going to take a week off, but a week turns into 3 months, which happens to a lot of people, right? Overcoming that 3 months off is like Herculean to get back into that first workout. Many of us had this in the pandemic, right? Where you're like, you get out of a routine and then to start the routine again, it's like so much mental gymnastics to start it again. But if I'm just doing a little bit every day, all the time, I'm constantly in motion. And if I have a hiccup, I miss a day, no big deal. But the more we sit back, the harder it is to move forward. So when we're looking at small wins and we look at that healed cycle of self-trust, what we have here is we have an action step, we have a missed goal or failure, defeat. Down here, we're feeling all the feelings, frustration, disappointment, angry, what have you. But then when we remember our worth, we start back on this upswing. We start on this upswing of like, okay, that's not how I thought it was going to go, but I'm willing to try again. Here's what I'm going to do instead. I've been through hard times before, and I know I can do hard things. So what's a small step I can take? And that's where I own my power and take that next small step. When I take that next small step and I continue that cycle repeatedly, there is momentum to that cycle that allows us to keep winning. And so if we're having hard times, and let's recognize that we are in this cycle of endless hard times right now, no matter like what you do and who you are and how you show up in the world, we are in a season, a very long, relentless, enduring season of hard times. And then we need to really look at, if we're going to be in this season that we don't know when it's going to end, how do I keep showing up every single day? It is absolutely in finding, owning, and celebrating and seeing those small wins so that you can keep going. I don't care how tiny they are. I don't care how silly they seem. I don't care like if no one else would deem them a win. All that matters is that you see it as a win. And I teach this stuff, and I still have to do this every single day, to look at the day and be like, what was the win today? What was the thing I'm going to carry with me that's going to allow me to move forward tomorrow and feel powerful tomorrow, as the world continues to feel like a place where I don't have a lot of power, where there's so much uncertainty, where things are so out of control and unbelievable things just keep happening. How am I going to carry those wins as I move forward? So that's using your small wins to your advantage and to stay in motion. To own your superpowers and to use those superpowers to then stay in motion is going to look like identifying what are the skills, and you can literally like take a piece of paper, fold it in half. On one half of the paper, you put on there, what are the things you're good at? On the other half of the paper, what are the things you're passionate about? So I can put on my sheet of paper, what am I good at? I'm good at having hard conversations. I'm good at speaking. I'm good at podcasting. I'm good at writing. I'm good at leadership. I'm good at blah, blah, blah. Those are the things I'm good at. And you don't have to be like expert level good, just like you have a reasonable skill set in them. And then what are the things that you're passionate about? When I decided to start the podcast, I had to go through this exercise, and I was deciding, do I want to start a blog or do I want to start a podcast? And I recognized that my skill set was more aligned with a podcast at that time in my life. And especially with the time constraints that I had. Blogging, I get too perfectionistic about. I was like, blogging's not the skill I really want to tap into right now. Podcasting is the skill I want to tap into. What are the things I'm really passionate about? And I literally made a list, and I was like, okay, I'm passionate about health and wellness. That's what I've been doing for 15 years. I'm passionate about motherhood and how it completely transforms your identity, but no one tells you that. Like, you don't know until you're a mom that your whole identity shifts overnight and there's no going back. And so I'm really passionate about talking about that. I'm really passionate about social justice. I'm really passionate about inclusivity. I'm really passionate about all sorts of different things. Where is there intersection between the things I'm good at and the things I'm passionate about? So you might be really passionate, or you might be really good at making connections. You might be really good at relationships. You might be really good at working with people one-on-one. And then where are your passions? Maybe you're really passionate about knitting or gardening. We have a friend who got out of corporate, and she was like, I love helping people start gardens. And so she took like, what is she good at? She's good at working one-on-one with people, not being in a corporate setting with a whole bunch of dudes she doesn't like. And what is a passion? Gardening. She started a garden mentoring business where she would go and mentor people on gardening. And she was on the news doing it. And like, she had this like massively successful business, marrying the things that she has skills around and the things that she's passionate about into a superpower. And so you can start just with those and track those two lists for a while to see what are the skills that I have that I've acquired over the course of a lifetime. And some of them are hard skills and some of them are soft skills. So you might have technical skills, but you might also have interpersonal skills, and all of that counts. You also have life experience skills. And then look at the things that you're passionate about. And those probably are different than they were 2 years ago. And so looking at what are the things that you're passionate about right now, and then where's the intersection between those lists where you can identify, oh, this is something that makes me uniquely me, that not a lot of other people can do or want to do, that give me energy, light me up, and lift me up.
I love that. And I would love to know if anyone recognizes what their superpowers are, and if they could put them in the chat. I would love to see. I'm still working on what mine might be. I think it might be making bad puns, but something like that.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, my kids will roll their eyeballs at me when I do that. But one of the things you were talking about with the small wins, so many people, when you sit down for dinner with your family, if you do that, and you say, what was good about today? And so that was, we would do that when I had all three kids at home, and it was a way to focus on some small wins. So we might be bringing that back.
Yeah. Can I give another one? I love that one.
Yeah.
One that I do. So we've done that one. We've done roses and thorns and highs and lows and wins and all that. We've done that at dinner as a family activity, and gratitude as a family activity. One of the things that I do every morning that's been really grounding is my therapist recommended. So shout out to therapy. Everyone needs therapy, especially after a pandemic. My therapist said to me, as a tool for managing anxiety, she said, what if you just sat down every morning and for like 30 minutes, just sipped a cup of coffee and thought about what you want to make the day be and how you could make this ideal day. And so as she's saying this, I'm like, 30 minutes of like sipping my coffee and not doing something? No. So I was like, I'll give you 2 minutes. So our compromise, which I've loved, is that when I make my coffee, pour it in my mug, those first 3 sips, as I'm standing looking out my window, overlooking Green Lake and Mount Rainier. If you're in Seattle, you know those landmarks. So I'm overlooking Green Lake and Mount Rainier, sipping my first 3 sips of coffee. And I think of 3 things I'm grateful for one thing with each sip every single morning. And it's typically things that happen the day before. And it's often really small, silly things. So I don't try to make it like, I'm grateful for like my home and my health. And it's not big. I try to make it really tiny things, because when you can find those little tiny things, you can find magic in any moment. And so it's often like, oh, that thing that my dog did that made me laugh, or having an unexpected connection or phone call or text exchange with someone, those little tiny things. And I start my day with that. And that's a really grounding activity to recognize, like, today's going to be a good day. Good things are going to happen today because good things happened yesterday.
I love that. I'm going to start doing that. Yeah.
3 sips of coffee. You don't have to
3 sips of coffee.
Take 30 minutes if you want.
No 30 minutes. But Susan says her superpower: chief entrepreneur evangelist, supercharges power-ups, boosts entrepreneurs.
Love it.
So yeah, that's great. Thank you.
I also want to acknowledge Susan's titles, that you get to pick your titles. So I love chief entrepreneur evangelist. Please, everybody, create your own titles that you get to make up, that you get to own, and that you get to proudly wear in the world. I think that's so important. And I think that goes a lot, like your superpower should have a superpower name.
Exactly. Yep. But we don't all need capes.
Exactly.
And you touched on this. So the last 2 years have been difficult, and nothing is a given. As we've learned in the last 2 years, and change can happen. So what is your advice for women who want to shake things up for the rest of this year? How can we play bigger? For 2022, yes. We've got a few months remaining. So
yes. So how can you play bigger in 2022 is, first of all, and this is going to be hard if you're like me and you're kind of a control freak, type A kind of a person, is really recognizing that change is permanently here forever. And it's always been here, and it's going to keep being here. Brené Brown, on her podcast, Unlocking Us, many months ago, read this quote from Jim Collins that referenced what I just said. The quote was something like, change has always been a part of the world, and it always will be a part of the world. And so, like, get over this idea that like, we just need to get through this season of change, because we're always going to be in a season of change. And when she read this quote, I was so mad, because I wanted it to be that like, we're in this season, but it's going to end, and then it will be fine. And then everything will be stable and secure. The reality is nothing ever was stable and secure, and it never is going to be. And so instead, if we can recognize that I am adaptable, and I am powerful, and I can pivot and shift and reimagine and be creative and be innovative, and I can do hard things, and I can revamp my identity, and I can reinvent myself. When we can embrace all of that, which is hard, it's really, really hard if you are someone who likes stability and sameness. But when we can embrace all that and look at evidence that we have been doing that our whole lives, because there is evidence to support that for all of you, then we can look at, okay, If I can adapt in the face of change, if I can grow and learn, no matter what the universe throws at me, no matter what what happens in the world, then what does that mean for what I want to go after in the next 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 5 years? So first of all, recognizing and owning your adaptability, even though maybe you never wanted to sign up for being adaptable, you already signed up for it. You're already doing it. You're going to have to keep doing it. So then looking at, what do you want to do and why haven't you already done it? And so we often think that we have to wait until the variables are a certain way. And this can look like so many things. So when I had my gym, I worked with a lot of women and moms when I had in the fitness industry, and who would come to me and they'd say, I don't want to start the gym, or I don't want to start a program or what have you until XYZ, until the kids are out of school, or the kids are back in school, or the kids are out of the house, or this or that, or the other thing, or until my work slows down, or until my partner has better work hours, or whatever the thing might be. That happens in that fitness industry, but it also happens in our professional lives. I don't want to write the book until XYZ. I don't want to start the podcast until these ducks are in a row. I don't want to go for the promotion or ask for the raise or find a new job or go back to school until. Some of those things, some of our untils can be really legitimate and important. And also some of them can be what John Acuff, and I'll type his name in the chat. This is a really great book. John Acuff has a book called Finish, and he calls these noble obstacles. So yes, remove the untils. So John Acuff has what he calls noble obstacles, and noble obstacles are the things that we put in our way. And we're like, well, of course I'm going to write the book. But first, I'm going to need to wait till my 3 children are grown, and until I get a degree in literature, and until I redecorate my office, and until I get the right pen set, and until, and we don't ever write the book, right? So looking at what are the things that we keep putting off that we want to embrace as part of our identity, that I want to be a writer, or I want to be someone that holds a certain position. I want to be that chief entrepreneur and evangelist. Why are we putting that off? And what could we be doing right now? So instead of looking at what we want to do in 20 years and having it be this big aspirational thing, look at what is a tiny step I can take in that direction right now. And so for me, with the podcast, when I started the podcast, I had this vision of, I want to start a podcast in the next 6 to 9 months. And I'm not sure if I want it to be about motherhood or fitness. And I was like really floundering in that for quite a while. And my business coach at the time connected me to someone who did some podcast coaching. She's like, just talk to this guy, see what he has to say. So I talked to him, and he's like, you need to start this within like the next 6 weeks. And I was like, oh, hell no. I'm like, this is like a 6 to 9 month plan. And in my mind, I was like, or like 12 to 18 months. Like it was still like out there because it felt safe to have it out there. So he's like, let's just work on a couple things and see what happens. And I ended up launching the podcast 9 weeks later. And I felt so not ready, but I also knew that there wasn't really safety in waiting for longer. And here's what happened when I did it. So I launched it in 9 weeks, and I wasn't positive beyond, I knew I was going to focus on motherhood, but I wasn't totally positive exactly what I wanted the scope to be. So I was like, I'm going to create 12 episodes. And I created 12 episodes, which had a bit of a sequence to them. And then I was like, I'm just going to see how that goes and see what happens. I did not have a 5-year plan for a podcast. And what ended up happening is I created the 12 episodes. I got feedback on them, which fueled the 13th episode and the 14th episode and the 15th episode. And now 6 years later, today I will be recording the 646th episode.
Wow.
Because I decided to take a chance on myself, to just start, and then to feel my way. And what happened was that healed cycle of self-trust. I'm going to start. I'm going to see how it feels. I'm going to own my superpowers in there. And even when it's wonky and feels weird, I'm going to keep going to the next step. And there was definitely hiccups. Within the first week, I got a cease and desist on the title of my show and had to hire a lawyer. Like it was a whole disaster. I could have stopped because a woman wanted to sue me. And instead, I hustled like I've never hustled before while I was traveling in a hotel room, rebranded the whole show, relaunched it under another name, And I kept going. And so when you can decide that you're going to just take one little next step and then make a next decision, you have permission to not have those things that are way out there stay way out there. You have permission to bring them in here and make them much smaller in order to get started, in order to just take one step. So if you want to write the book, build a mind map, get some Post-it notes, just throw some ideas in whatever. If I was going to write a book, I would put it in a very linear fashion in an outline and have it all in bullet points. But my friends who write books, like they mind map on a whole whiteboard or a whole wall, and they're all over the place. What is the thing that you could do that just allows you to take a step toward the thing that you want? So what does it look like to give yourself permission to think bigger in 2022? Look at the thing you want to do in 5 years and take one step toward that thing. Don't look at writing the whole book or getting the whole degree or opening and launching the whole business. Do one little thing toward that and let that step be the impetus to the next step.
So how do we find the people that we need to lean on to help us get through this? Because as we've learned, it's hard to do anything in isolation. I mean, although a lot of us have been in isolation for two years, and we're coming out of that, but really you do need support. So how do we find that? What do we do?
Yeah. So there's two pieces of this. When I talk about support and I talk about this, I have this whole CEO blueprint that I have my business coaching clients go through. So when I'm working with a business coaching client and we're talking about support around a goal, you're looking at who are the people who are going to cheerlead and champion you. And then who are the people that you can leverage? Sometimes those are the same people. So the people that are going to cheerlead and champion me when I start something new, probably my husband, probably my kid, mostly, depending on the day, depending on how much a 9-year-old feels like championing his mother. I have a few good friends who I'll share ideas with and be like, I think I'm going to do this thing. And the people who've shown up repeatedly to be like, oh my gosh, I could totally see you doing that. Yes, you have to do that. And I will vulnerably go in and say, like, I feel scared. I'm not totally sure what I want to do with this, but I think I want this to be the next step. And I find those people who are my ultimate cheerleaders and champions, even if they don't get it. My mom, who does not understand anything that I do, but she's like, I love you. You can do anything. Like sometimes that's all I need. So you have those cheerleader champion people who are one arm of support. And then you have the people who you can leverage, who are either doing what you are already doing, who can mentor you, whether it's formally or informally. So formal mentoring might be hiring a business coach, or hiring an executive coach. Informal mentoring might be like, I consider Brene Brown my mentor. She doesn't know it. I'm not paying her, but she definitely inspires and impacts my work. A lot of people would say like, yeah, Oprah's my mentor. So whoever has gone before you that inspires you and is leading you in the direction you want to go, those can be your mentors, whether they're hired, paid, or unpaid. The other piece is to look at who are the people that are already doing the thing that you want to do, but you can actually be friends with and be in person with and be in community with. So I have a whole network of friends who also have podcasts now because they get what it's like to have a podcast. They get what it's like to have to push record 646 times. So those are my podcast friends. I have entrepreneurial friends who understand what it's like to build a business and be 19 years into building a business and all the ebbs and flows that come with that. And now as I'm getting more into speaking and really intentional around speaking, I'm in a coaching group that's just for people who are speakers and building speaking businesses. So you're looking at where can you have support that's the people that just love you unconditionally, who will always cheer for you. And then where are the people who can support you by mentoring you or just being in the arena with you because they're doing the same kind of thing. And there can be vulnerability in finding those people because it requires like going and making new friends, but it is absolutely worth it. The loneliest I've been is in the fitness industry with a failing fitness business and sitting at home by myself, crunching Excel spreadsheets and not knowing how to keep the doors open. As soon as I found other people who had fitness businesses who were excited to talk about it with me, all of a sudden I had new ideas because I had all these other brains who were saying, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is what's working for me. And I went from having a business that I almost closed the doors on in 2008 to having a really successful business that I was able to sell in a really successful way 10 years later.
So I just, a couple of things in the chat. MA says, I should listen to this recording every day. Hope to share it far and wide. Thank you for the wisdom. And so it is.
Thank you, MA.
And we're going to put where to find Sara on the internet in just a little bit, but you should definitely check out the podcast too. Just in the final few minutes, I know you talked about taking 3 sips of coffee and being the great gratitude on a daily basis. But what is one thing that you can do, that we can do to frame our day to get what we want or to get what we need from other people each day?
Yeah. So to stop and listen inward instead of listening outward. And this is really hard.
Yeah.
We're really conditioned to listen outward because we get up and we feel like I should be a responsible citizen and listen to the news or watch the news or have the radio on when I'm getting ready. And then we get on social media and we're scrolling social media, and then we're trying to be responsible coworkers and team members, and we're checking email. And we very quickly have all these outside influences telling us who we should be today and how we should show up and what is expected of us. And that goes right into undermining and eroding our self-trust and our intuition. So if you can spend a moment listening inward, which might be your 3 sips of coffee and the gratitude, it might be sitting down and journaling, it might be taking your dog for a walk and listening to a book, an audiobook or a podcast, but how are you checking in with yourself and prioritizing what you need first? And so you can do that through your cup of coffee and the 3 gratitude items. Or another way you can do this is, before you look to see what other people need and expect of you every day, you write down for yourself, what are the 3 action steps I need to take today for today to be considered successful? And they might be personal, they might be professional, it might be a combination of both, but you get to choose how you're going to create a successful day before someone else dictates to you how your day is going to be successful. And if you can every single day recognize, here's the 3 things I need to do today to consider it a success, then you are not going to be consistently broken by external forces telling you that you did the wrong thing, you did it the wrong way, you didn't meet the mark, you didn't meet someone else's expectations. Because at the end of the day, it's all about, how can I look at what I did today and choose to see my day as a success, no matter what the outcomes were, no matter what anyone else has to say about it, because ultimately it begins and ends with me. So it's taking that power pause. I call it a power pause. So whether the power pause is with your coffee, whether it's writing down your 3 action steps for the day, whether it's both, whether it's going for a walk, whether it's meditating, having that power pause to begin the day, having that power pause again at the end of the day, and whatever works feels right for you to do a check-in, that creates that space for you to be able to own the day in a really powerful way.
I like that, power pause. I shall be doing that more. So tell us where we can find you. So where on the internet? And
yes.
Anna, can you put up the graphics too? I know you've put it in the chat, but
so people can find me at shamelessmom.com. That's my website. The podcast is on any podcast platform. So if you go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere, you can find the podcast. I have a podcast link, shamelessmom.com/podcast. Will take you into Apple, but you can listen wherever you listen to shows. I have a Facebook group. If you're a mom and you want to join my free Facebook group, you can do that at shamelessmom.com/Facebook. I have my Instagram, which is where I spend the most time on social media, at Shameless Mom Academy. And then on LinkedIn, I'm at Sara Dean Speaks. So if you are looking for a speaker to come speak to your group, to your company, to your organization, to a women's leadership event, or a leadership event, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, or you can reach out to me directly. And I'll put my email in the chat here if people want to find me. Whoops, let's see.
And we'll send out an email afterwards with these links too.
Okay. And that's my email right there.
Okay, terrific.
Yes.
I have loved this conversation. Thank you. I want to wrap with just a few quick questions for you.
Yes.
So the first one is, what would you say to your 25-year-old self?
I love this question because I had like a meltdown at 25 that I hadn't accomplished enough. So I would tell her there's still plenty of time. And also nothing, like, nothing will be what you think it will be, but it will be better than you could ever imagine.
Yeah. What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail?
I would ski a lot more black diamond runs. I'm an emerging skier. I just learned to ski a few years ago, and I am trying to be brave. I would do that. And I would also write the book.
Write the book. No
There
more
is a book
until.
inside of me.
Yep.
Just like there was a podcast inside of me, and I would write the book.
Well, speaking of books, do you have any book recommendations? What are you reading now?
I am currently reading How to Raise a Feminist Son by Sonora Jha. And I am also reading The Body Keeps the Score by, I can't remember the author, but The Body Keeps the Score. This is not light reading, by the way. It's like trauma and feminism. And feminism can be traumatic. So not light reading. But those are my 2 books that I'm reading right now. I'll leave it at that.
Good choices. What would the theme song be for the movie of your life?
Probably Elton John, Still Standing.
Oh, I like that. I always say that mine is the circus theme from the circus. But and then finally, what is your favorite place in the world and why?
Oh gosh, this just changed in like the last week. I know, Natalia, I was just on vacation. So my favorite place in the world for a long time was Cannon Beach, Oregon, because we have so many family members there. But we last week went to Isla Mujeres, Mexico, and I might have found a new favorite place.
Nice. Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, thank you, Sara.